Hey everybody. So today we're going to take a look at this shot, which I shot for an advertising agency in New York City. It was all about their online media buying and media selling platform. They have some new technology to measure audiences online and they wanted to show it off, so they made this video. So this is a really good example of why you would want a colorist or an editor on the set. What they wanted to do with this shot was they wanted to get the sense that you were in New York City. This is a big office, and I will admit, it's not the most interesting shot in the world, but the client really wanted to stress that they were in New York in the video. And you can see out the window that this is New York. This is just not some office building in Paramus. It was on the east side of New York, right near the UN. So this shot was difficult to get. It was kind of a technical challenge on set. We had fluorescent lights. We had some incandescent lights that you can't see. And we had our lights, and we had obviously sunlight blasting through this window. Now, to do this shot right, you'd kind of pick a color temperature, probably 56-ish, because most of these were blue, 56, some weren't. You would have had to put neutral density film in the windows, maybe wrap up the 32K bulbs that some of these fluorescents were. Some of them were 43. I don't even know what some of them were. We ran our lights at 56 because we wanted to kind of match the sunlight in the room. So it was a lighting nightmare. There was a lot of lights, a lot of different temperatures, and a lot of different light sources. You can't see our lights, but they're off camera here in the back. They're kind of lighting up where this woman is about to walk. And again, not the most interesting shot in the world, but it's one the client really wanted to have. So I had to figure out how to make it work on set. And we didn't have time to adjust all these lights. We didn't have time to hang up neutral density filters. It was one shot for the beginning of this video, and it wasn't even really a main shot, but it had to work. So I shot it on our Sony FS7, and I shot it in S-Log3. Now, if you look down here at the scopes, this was shot in log. Now, some of that sky is clipping right there. Not much I could do about that. And our blacks are really low. There is a lot of dynamic range in this shot. For example, this shot was also shot log. Now, you can see the whites are clipped out here. That's right here. But look where the blacks are. This is normally where you'd expect to see a shot that was recorded in log to live on a scope. But this one, it's way down here. There's a lot going on in here. That black is very black, and those whites are very bright. So if you shot this in Rec 709, it probably would have looked like this. This is the same shot with the Rec 709 LUT applied. Got a lot of blown out skies, a lot of crunchy, crushed blacks. I didn't want that. I wanted to preserve the skies. So I shot it like this. I irised down as much as I could to get as much of that sky in as I could. I paid attention to my log scopes on set. I made sure that my blacks weren't crushed. And this is as unblown out as I could get those highlights. I figured I could lose some of those clouds, but I wanted to keep that black detail. Now that I'm looking at this shot, this waveform looks like a waveform for a Rec 709 shot, but it really wasn't. We shot it in log. Because there's so much dynamic range in this shot, when you look at just the waveform, it looks like a normal video shot. You got highlights up here, blacks down there, but when you look at the vector scope, not a lot of chrominance there. So trust me, it was shot in log. So in the first node, I just concentrated on exposure. I got some blacks crushed. I brightened up the shot. I don't have it quite at 100 yet. And if you look at the vector scope, I put in some saturation and I gave it a little color boost. I've been using color boost more and more for log shots. It seems to give a more natural looking saturation than this saturation does. So in the second node, which is here, I started to fix up some of the colors. I crushed my lift down. I brought my gain up a little bit. I'm going to blow this up to twice as big so we can see it a little better. I also started to push it towards magenta because I'm looking at it. We've got a lot of yellows there and a lot of greens there. And I moved my gamma and my lift up towards magenta. Don't be scared of magenta. Magenta is just a way to get rid of green and yellows. So here's my blob, right? It's not quite in the center. It's a little towards green. That's with the node on. I'm pushing it up away from the green towards magenta. And I also put a curve in here. You can see I brought my blacks down, my midtones up in the curve, and my highlights down. And by doing that, I'm getting some blacks back in the picture. And I'm also brightening up the midtones. And I do want to keep those skies in there, so I brought down my highlights here a little bit. In node 3, I brought my lift and my gamma down a little bit and my gain up a little bit. And by doing that, the picture kind of gets brighter and more contrasty. I also put this extreme curve here on the highlights. I wanted my brights to get brighter. I felt that she was kind of sitting there in the dark. And notice how this kind of looks muddy here and the floor and over here. It kind of looks muddy, but when I turn this node on and I raise this curve, we get a much brighter overall picture. I knew it was going to be a lot of work in post, and I shot it as best I could with the time I had to make it easier for Resolve to color correct, meaning none of the blacks were crushed and none of the whites were blown out. So at the end of node 3, I've kind of got it on planet Earth. I like the exposure on her. I like the crunchiness of it. We have brights, blacks, and her skin tone looks pretty good. But overall, the shot, it's still kind of a mess. We've got a lot of blue back here. There's still some green in it. This ceiling was white when I was standing there. So is this wall. There's a lot of color issues we're going to have to take care of. And that's what kind of the rest of the shot is. So in node 4, if we look at the scopes, what's going on is that's on, off. There's a lot of yellow in that picture, yellow, green. So what I did in this node was a hue versus sat, and I brought down the yellows and the greens in the pictures. It's just subtle. This is on, off, on, off. You can really kind of see it on the scopes right here. On, off. Look at the floor here. Yellow, over here is kind of yellow, green. All that yellow and greenness is gotten out of the picture. A subtle adjustment, but the picture, if anything, was too blue. Yellow and green really didn't belong in it, which is why I removed them. Now this is the power of log. For node 5, I've keyed the windows, and what I did with the windows was, they're blown out, they're too hot there. I brought them down a little bit. You can see there's some more details in the building. That sky's coming back, off, on, off, on. A lot of that is coming back, and it was also a bit too blue, very blue, so I pushed it up towards red. I pushed the midtones up towards red and the highlights up towards red to get rid of some of that blue tint. Node 6, another subtle adjustment. If we zoom into our talent here, this black looked like that when I shot it. You can kind of see some definition a little bit. It's right there in the scopes. That's her black outfit right there. This is what it looked like before the corrector in node 6. It's kind of a black mush compared to what we shot. All I did was I pulled the key from all the blacks in the picture, as you can see. And I just brought my lift up a little bit, just a little bit. So instead of a black hole there, you've got a little bit of definition, a little bit of texture on her clothing. So this next one was a bit of value add for the client, and it kind of tied the whole video together for them. Their logo has pinks and magentas in it, and each shot in the video, I turned something pink or magenta. And this blue wall here just happened to key perfectly. So I was able to match this wall to the pink, or the magenta in this case, of the company's logo. It was very easy to do. I just pulled a qualifier key on this wall, which looked like this, and then I kind of drew a mask around it. I knew I would have to do a lot of work on this shot, which is why I locked it down on a tripod. And because not a lot of things are moving in this shot except for the girl, she's basically walking in front of a blue screen. So this keyed quite well. All I did was spin the hue until it turned to the company magenta-y color. When you're doing a key like this or changing a color like this drastically, I would recommend against fiddling with lift, gamma, and gain. Don't make it any brighter or don't make it any darker. Your eye and the keyer, more importantly, is going to notice shifts in luminance. If I made that wall brighter or I made that wall darker, you'd really kind of see it on the key a lot more than you would if you were just simply changing the color. So in your lift, gamma, gain, when you tweak a shot like this, feel free to adjust your color, but don't adjust your luminance. Most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, that'll be the dead giveaway. So fortunately, this wall, when I spun the hue, it turned the color in their logo. I didn't have to make it brighter or darker. I could just spin the hue around. You know, sometimes you get lucky, right? So in node 8, I'm looking at this picture now. I'm happy with her clothing. I'm happy with that wall. But I'm looking at it, and there's an awful lot of blue spill in this picture. It's coming from these windows here. A lot of blue up here on the ceiling, a lot of blue up here. There's some funky blue here and some funky blue here. So what I did in node 8 was I drew a mask around the desk because I liked this blue on the monitors here. I didn't like this blue. And all I did for node 8 was did a hue versus sat. And everything outside of this window, I sucked all the blue out of it. So let's turn that node off and back on. all this blue is gone. All the blue off the ceiling, all the blue on the wall. Unfortunately, the blue off the building and the blue off the window is gone. But that's okay. I can bring this back in another node. Node number 9. So in node 9, that's where I got some of my blue back. I did a luminance key, push my gain down towards blue. Off. Really weird looking. Back on. We've got some blue back in that window, and we've kept it off all this ceiling. Node 10, they didn't like this bulletin board after the fact, so all I did in node 10 was I drew a shape, and I blurred it using the blur node. Node 11, I just added a little bit more lighting. She's kind of walking there in the dark, so I just drew a shape, brought up my gamut and my gain a little bit. Off. Pretty dark, kind of dingy a little bit. On. She's walking into the light. And finally, in node 12, which is the inverse, that's what this little blue line means, of node 11, I brought down my lift and my gamma. Now, we've turned this shot from this, which we shot logarithmically, into this. So this is why I like to be on set. To do this shot, quote-unquote, properly, it would have taken an awful lot of time on set, and we didn't have a lot of time to shoot this stuff. So I worked with my partner, Jim, and together we came up with this plan that we would shoot this shot that the client wanted with a very minimal setup. We didn't want to start gelling lights and hanging up neutral density filters, but we had to get this shot because the client wanted it. So I highly recommend bringing your editor or your colorist or your visual effects artist or all three on set when you shoot things, because they can definitely help you out and save you time on set so you can get more footage and more coverage. Because they might say something like, don't worry about that, I can fix that later. Don't take 40 minutes to fiddle around with that light or that flag or whatever. I can fix that quite easily in post. And you'll save a lot of time on set and you'll get more footage. So I really can't show you guys a video. It had some proprietary stuff that they didn't want the public to see. It's kind of a sales tape for prospective clients. But I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope that helped you out. So to sum it all up, this is kind of what the shot would have looked like coming right out of a Rec 709 camera. And that's what I color graded it into. By using the power of log footage and by being on set and being able to understand what was going on and be able to figure out a workflow in post while I was on set. In retrospect, looking at it, this building is now kind of black and white. I maybe would have done something to fix up that building, bring the color back in that building. You can see that's what it kind of looked like. And these buildings here, we're losing a lot of detail here. There's definitely detail in those buildings. Somewhere along the line, those details got lost. But what are you going to do? Lesson learned. The next time I have to shoot out a window like this, I'll know. I'll have a much better sense of what it's going to look like in post. Here's the shot. It's got a speed ramp on it. So she comes out walking real fast and then she goes slow. And I also would have gotten rid of these flares. These are the lights we set up. I probably would have done something about that. So it's not the perfect shot, but it's a lot better than it was. And the client liked it, and I liked it a lot too. So I hope you guys learned something, and happy correcting, everybody.